She said it like a joke. "Oh, he used to be a security guard at some government building." Everyone laughed, even my own son. Have you ever sat through a dinner where someone from your own family, someone who should know better, made you feel small in front of strangers? I didn't argue that night. I just smiled. But what came after? Silence can speak louder than any revenge. Before we jump in, I want to know, where in the world are you right now? And what time are you listening? Let me know in the comments. The night began simple enough. My son and his wife had thrown a birthday dinner at their new place downtown, one of those houses with high ceilings and too much silverware. I came to smile, shake hands, and leave before the crowd turned loud. Retirement had made me quieter. For a while I almost felt comfortable until Laura opened her mouth. She stood beside me, arm looped around my son's, and said, "This is my father-in-law, Ed. He used to be a security guard at some government building." It wasn't what she said, it was how. Light practiced the kind of tone that makes mockery sound polite. A few guests chuckled. Someone raised a glass. Well, at least you kept people safe. I nodded as I'd done my whole life. The smile stayed, but something inside turned slow and dry like an old hinge. The talk drifted to vacations, investments, new cars. My son met my eyes once, then looked away. The glass trembled slightly in my hand, hidden behind the chatter. Laura laughed again, sharp rehearsed. "Ed's always been humble," she said. "Never bragged about what he did." "Rare these days," someone added. More laughter. I excused myself and stepped out to breathe. The damp chill hit hard. Voices blurred behind me, and I stood still, letting it all fade. For years I'd believed quiet was dignity. But I'd mistaken it for something else, erasure. The uniform still sat folded in my closet badge, tucked away with papers no one had asked to see. My grandson once called it Grandpa's costume. I laughed then, never told him the vest still carried a dent from a day I didn't talk about. "Ed, you okay?" my son asked from the doorway. "Fine, just need air." He hesitated, phone still in hand. "You know how Laura is." "It's fine," I said again. He nodded and went back. Laughter thinned into music. I stayed until the noise softened, then returned to my seat. Laura smiled, like nothing had happened. "We saved you a seat, Dad." Her sweetness felt rehearsed. The speeches began work stories, polite jokes, my son thanking his wife for a perfect evening, ending with, "And thanks to Dad for being here. You've always taught me discipline." A few claps followed. Someone whispered near me. "He must have been strict guarding those doors." Another small laugh. Something inside clicked open, not anger, just understanding. The next morning came without meaning. The street felt still, like everyone else had already gone somewhere. My phone buzzed messages from old friends. "Saw the photos, you looked great. Retirement treating you well." Ed, then Laura's post, a photo from last night. A simple night with family. My father-in-law used to be a security guard, proof that hard work runs in the family. I stared at it before turning the screen down. My stomach tightened, not in anger, but from holding it back. Her words weren't lies, just small enough to make the truth sound smaller. The cup had gone cold. I set it aside and let the clock fill the space. One line online and 30 years of service disappeared. I'd learned to live with quiet, but sometimes quiet turns mean. The phone rang again. My son. Dad, Laura didn't mean anything by it. You know how she gets online. I'm not angry, I told him. I know, I just don't want things awkward. They're not. He hesitated. "You coming by for dinner tonight?" "Not tonight." When the call ended, I stayed still, letting the ticking carry on. There's a calm that follows humiliation, not peace, just the weight after a storm. I opened a drawer and laid an old envelope on the table, my badge worn at the edges. A commendation letter dated 15 years ago. A photo of my team, 5 of us grinning outside the courthouse. Courthouses, airports, motorcades. None of that ever made its way online. The badge felt colder than I remembered. Put it back, shut the drawer, and finished the last swallow from the cup. I decided to walk to the grocery down the block. Seattle carries a kind of damp honesty. Nothing shines. Everything just stands where it is. Mrs. Coleman waved from her porch. "Saw you on Facebook," she called. "Didn't know you worked security. Bet you've got stories." "Plenty," I said. She laughed and went back in. At the store, the cashier greeted me by name, asked about retirement. I gave a short answer, bought bread and soup, and started home. The phone rang again. Unknown number. I almost ignored it, but the voice that came through stopped me. "Ed, it's Henry." I hadn't heard from him in years. His tone still carried that gravelly warmth, the laugh that never waited for a reason. "How the hell are you old man still breathing?" I said. "Listen, your name came up at the office. They're planning a recognition ceremony for old service members. Guess who's on the list?" "You're kidding. Not this time. You're due for some credit. Thought I'd warn you before they mail the letter." The words took their time landing. After all this, they finally figured you kept more people safe than they remember. "I'll be there too. Be good to see you." We talked about old names, who was gone, who still called on birthdays. When the line went silent, I stayed where I was. Recognition never sat right with me. Unsure whether I wanted it, yet part of me still needed someone to remember. The day thinned out. Warmed, some soup, ate, half poured the rest away. The television filled the room with the wrong kind of noise, so it went off, leaving the table and the waiting envelope. Pulled the photo out, Henry younger, grinned steady as ever. We used to joke our best days were the ones no one noticed. Be invisible until something broke. Maybe that skill had worked too well. Henry called the next day. I answered on the second ring. "Got your letter yet?" he asked. "Not yet. It'll come this week. Ceremony's next Friday. Don't you dare skip it." Papers shuffled on his end. He sounded busy the way he always had. Steady, efficient. "Remember the old office by the pier. That's where they'll hold it." Feels right, doesn't it? Fitting, I said, though I wasn't sure why. After the call, I left the house without a reason, just needing to move. The Harbor Cafe hadn't changed. Same hum of talk, same hint of salt and burnt beans. The waitress still knew me. Still Black Mr. Collins. I nodded, slid into the corner booth. Henry arrived a few minutes later, shoulders broad, steps slower. "Well, I'll be damned," he said, removing his cap. "You haven't aged a day. You're blind," I told him. He laughed, ordered the same thing, and set a thin envelope on the table. "Thought you'd want to see this before they mail it." My name stood printed neat and official: Edward Collins, recognized for distinguished service and commitment. A smaller line read, "Federal Protective Service, retired." Not much, yet heavier than it looked. "Hell of a thing," Henry said. "Took them 30 years, but they came around." I traced the edge. What do I do with it? Show up. That's enough. We talked about old posts, courthouse patrols, airport shifts, those long alerts when time passed only by who brought the coffee. For a moment, it felt like the job had never ended. Then Henry asked, "You ever tell your family what you really did?" They never asked. He gave a small, rough laugh. "Figures. People see the uniform, not the weight behind it. Not sure they even see that. Then, maybe it's time they do." The thought stayed with me after he left. I watched the water roll against the pier, gray turning green with each gust. Gulls circled above their cries, stretching thin. When I got home, the answering machine blinked. Laura's message filled the room. "Hi, Dad. Just checking in. We're hosting another dinner next week for the charity board. Would be nice if you joined. Everyone loved you last time." Her tone was bright, practiced. I didn't return the call. I placed Henry's envelope beside the box on the shelf. Medals, the photo, now the letter. A quiet collection of things nobody spoke of. I made a sandwich, ate half, left the rest. The stillness no longer felt empty. It waited for something. Before bed, I read the letter again. My name looked formal, distant, like it belonged to someone else. I folded it carefully beside the badge. Maybe it was time to decide what that name meant myself. Across the street, a young couple unloaded groceries, laughing at something I couldn't hear. Ordinary, simple, strangely comforting. The phone buzzed. Mom says you've been quiet. Everything okay? Typed fine, paused, erased it, wrote let's talk soon, and hit send before thinking twice. The message left the screen, and something shifted, neither pride nor anger, just motion. Sat on the bed while the city hum drifted faintly through the glass. The letter, the box, the words I'd finally sent all settled behind me like a steady weight that no longer pressed down. Layback phone still on, waiting for whatever came next. Laura called Sunday, her tone warm in that practiced way she used when asking for something. Dad, are you busy? We thought you could come over for dinner. Nothing formal this time. Almost said no, then hesitated, curiosity maybe, or the urge to see how long she'd pretend nothing had happened. Sure, I said. What time, 6? And, let's keep things light tonight, okay? Last time got a bit tense. Tense. She laughed too quickly. You know how people misunderstand things. Agreed, hung up and stared at the phone before setting it down. The kettle still warm, poured tea, watched the leaves drift. At 6, parked in front of their house. The lawn, perfect to the point of exhaustion. Laura opened the door, perfume sharp and sweet. You look nice. New jacket. It's old. She led me in. My son sat waiting, phone face down. Hey, Dad. Glad you made it. The table gleamed like a showroom, too polished, too deliberate. Dinner began politely. Questions about my garden, the fence, the weather. My answers stayed short. Between courses, her tone loosened. The charity board called, she said. They want to feature our family in the gala program. Maybe use some photos from last month's dinner. My fork froze. They said it's inspiring how we all come from different paths, but work together for something bigger. Different paths, I repeated. That what you call it? Sorry turning someone's life into a backdrop. Her smile faltered. I didn't mean it that way. You never do. The room went still. My son's eyes flicked between us. Dad, please. It's fine, I said, just trying to understand why we keep ending up here. Laura folded her napkin with surgical care. I only want things to look good. For the family. Good's one word. No one spoke again. My son clenched his jaw. Laura began clearing plates, each movement too sharp to be calm. When she reached for mine, I kept it a beat longer. You don't have to do everything yourself. I like order. I've noticed. After dinner, stepped onto the porch while they cleaned. The light glowed, moths brushed against it. Leaned on the railing. My son joined me, hands in pockets. She's just trying to make things easier, he said. For who? For everyone. She worries how people see us. She worries how they see her. He stayed, quiet eyes on the driveway. Maybe she doesn't understand what your job really was. Maybe she never cared to ask. A car passed, headlights sweeping across the street. Dishes clinked faintly from the kitchen. I'm tired, I told him. Think I'll head home. He wanted to stop me, but didn't. Drive safe. The car rolled slow through wet streets. Halfway home, the radio host mentioned the upcoming gala. Theme Unsung Protectors. Hung the jacket, went straight to the drawer where Henry's envelope waited. The letter lay exactly as I'd left it, corners curling slightly. Read it again. Distinguished service. Commitment. Words that once felt heavy, now somehow clear again. Thought of Laura's need for order. Maybe it wasn't cruelty, just her way to breathe. Still, I couldn't keep folding myself into her version of dignity. Poured a glass of water, left it half full on the counter. Tomorrow, I'd call Henry. Didn't know what I'd say, only that I would. Set the letter beside the phone, switched off. The light listened as the drizzle faded. Called him before I could change my mind. He answered on the first ring, steady as always. Knew you'd call, he said. Ready to show up this time, I think so. Good. The ceremony's Friday evening, but there's something else you should see first. He told me to meet him at the old district office downtown, the one we'd guarded years ago. The building looked smaller now, stripped of its weight. Henry waited by the steps with 2 paper cups. "They're displaying old service photos," he said. "Somebody found the archives. Figured you'd want to look." We walked through the doors together. The scent of paint and dust hung faintly in the hall. Along one wall, a row of frames, faces in uniform, some smiling, some stiff. Near the end, I found myself younger, solid posture, dark hair. Beneath it, Edward Collins, Federal Protective Service. Henry studied the next frame. "You were one of the good ones," he said. "Most folks waited for retirement. You cared about the job." I said nothing, eyes on the photo. Strange seeing proof I'd once been more than a name on a guest list. We left without much talk. The city moved on as if none of it mattered. Henry finally said, "You'll be at that gala. Your daughter-in-law's hosting, I suppose. Let them know who they're eating dinner with." I'm not trying to humiliate anyone. Truth doesn't humiliate. It corrects. The words stayed with me. Back home, the machine blinked. Laura's voice, smooth, rehearsed. "Hi, Dad. Don't forget the gala starts at 7 Friday. We've invited local press. It'd mean a lot if you came." Sleep never came easy that night. The photo on the wall, the letter on the table, her voice weaving through both. I walked barefoot through the house, stopped at the shelf, opened the box. The metals caught a dull glow. My fingers traced one's edges, the grooves worn deep. Not pride, something older waking up. "Thursday," Henry called again. "Department sending a team to the gala," he said. "Just a surprise for retirees. Surprise, nothing dramatic. A handshake, a few words. You'll see." The thought made my stomach tighten. I could already picture Laura's fixed smile when Truth arrived uninvited. Friday came quick. I pressed the navy suit from my son's wedding, polished the shoes until they almost passed for new. While tying the tie, rehearsed answers. 30 years of service. No, not just a guard. Yes, it mattered. By 5, Henry called again. "We're on our way. See you soon, partner." Drove through light drizzle to the venue. The parking lot glimmered with small puddles. Inside, voices blended into a steady hum. Laura appeared first, bright and polished. "Dad, you made it," she said, touching my arm. Wouldn't miss it. She guided me to a table near the stage. "You'll sit with board members. Keep stories short. You know how these nights run long. I'll keep that in mind." The event unfolded introductions, applause, a short film about the charity. I listened until the host mentioned families who dedicate their lives to service. Then came the pause. "Tonight," he said, "we also honor a guest whose decades of work protected thousands. Please welcome Mr. Edward Collins, retired Federal Protective Service officer." The room went still. Laura's hand froze mid-gesture. My son's brow furrowed. Across the hall, Henry stood clapping until others joined. I rose because staying seated felt wrong. Walked to the stage. The announcer handed me a box with a medal identical to the one waiting at home. Shook his hand. The applause swelled uneven but sincere. "My work was with good people," I said. "Most of it no one ever saw." That was the job. Someone nodded. I stepped down, passing Henry, who gripped my shoulder. "Told you the truth holds its ground." Didn't answer. Laura's silence weighted heavy but not suffocating. Picked up a glass of water, hand steady this time. Things didn't explode after that. No calls, no arguments, just a fog of pretending. Laura avoided the ceremony. My son did too. Both behaved as if nothing had happened, which somehow rang louder than anger. Went home, hung the new medal beside the old one, tried not to picture their faces at the table. Henry called next day. "You handled it well," he said. "I didn't handle anything. I just stood there. Sometimes standing there is enough." He asked about lunch later in the week. I said maybe. We both knew I needed time. At the store, a neighbor stopped me. "I saw that article, didn't know you worked for Homeland. That's impressive." I thanked her and moved on. Funny how one headline could change the way people saw you. I'd spent a lifetime invisible, and now they tilted their heads searching for something noble in the same man they'd ignored for years. At the mailbox, one white envelope waited official seal familiar weight. The letter confirmed my addition to the retired honor list, a short note thanking me for service rendered with quiet distinction. Quiet distinction. The phrase lingered. I set it on the counter, made a drink, watched steam twist away. Later my son called, his tone careful, testing the ground. "Dad, about the gala." I didn't know they'd do that. I figured. Laura was surprised too. She didn't mean I know what she meant. She wanted control of the story. She was embarrassed. I get it. Embarrassment's easier than admitting you were wrong. We drifted to small talk whether the car a show he thought I'd like. When the call ended, something eased, not forgiveness exactly, but space. Days slipped by. Walks grew longer each step, untying what had knotted overnight. Henry stopped in with a box of old photos. "Look at us," he said, laughing. "You were all business. You talked enough for both of us." We sat flipping through the stack. The images had softened, but they still carried weight proof that something real once stood behind all that quiet work. He leaned back. "You ever going to talk to her, your daughter-in-law?" "She already knows," I said. "Maybe that's enough." After he left, I stood by the glass, watching kids shout somewhere down the street. Life turns strange once you stop expecting an apology. Sleep wouldn't come. I walked to the kitchen, poured water, opened the box badge metal letter, added the new certificate, smoothed the crease, closed the lid. The phone buzzed. "Dinner Sunday. Just us this time." Didn't answer. Left it face down, the fridge hum filling the room. By Sunday, I'd decided to go not from obligation, but because avoiding her meant she still held power. She greeted me at the door alone. No guests, no staging. "Thanks for coming," she said. I took off my jacket. Didn't realize it'd just be us. Thought it'd be easier. The first few minutes felt stiff. She talked about work, a design project downtown. I listened, then she stopped. "I should have told the truth," she said quietly. "I wanted people to like me. I didn't think anyone cared about what you did. I stopped caring whether they did long ago." Her eyes dropped. "I care now." "That's good," I said, finishing my plate. "Then maybe you'll mean it." We cleaned up together. No apologies, no drama, just motion. "Over coffee," she said. "People at the gala kept asking who you were. Guess they know now. Knowing isn't the same as understanding. I think I'm starting to." I let the clock tick between us. At the door, she asked, "You'll come again?" "Maybe." The drive home was still. I rolled the window down, let the cold slip in. At a stoplight, my reflection looked older, but lighter too. Hung the jacket rinsed, the cup dried my hands. The box stayed shut, everything inside where it belonged. Days drifted by with a strange calm. People at the store greeted me differently. The mailman asked if I was the same Ed from the paper. Even the barista wrote my name carefully on the cup, smiling too wide. Small gestures harmless, yet each one reminded me how little my own family had ever seen. Henry called midweek. The department's planning another round of features, he told me. They want your story for the internal journal. Include me, how interview photo short, write-up. They must be out of names. Don't shrug it off, he said. It's your chance to set the record straight. I'll think about it. Think fast. They'll move on. Sleep came hard. The house creaked in its usual rhythm, but felt heavier. Made tea, sat by the glass, wondered what I'd even say if asked to explain a life spent behind other people's safety. How do you make invisible work sound like anything more than background noise? Next afternoon, Laura appeared unannounced, holding a pie from some bakery. Peace offering. I stepped aside. "There's coffee on." We sat at the table. She looked worn in a way I hadn't seen before. "Heard about the article," she said. "They're honoring you again." Something like that. "You must be proud." More relieved. "Pride's a young man's habit. I never understood what your job really was. I thought it was guarding buildings." It was, but the buildings held people. That's what counted. Her eyes softened. "I made you sound small. You made yourself sound bigger. People do that when they're scared." The pause between us held steady, not painful. "I don't know how to fix it," she murmured. "You don't. You just stop repeating it." She nodded, waiting for absolution I couldn't give. Forgiveness isn't a switch. It's the release of what you've stopped carrying. Before leaving, she asked, "Will you go to the next ceremony?" "Maybe." Her hand brushed my shoulder. The pie stayed untouched long after she left. Rain started early Thursday. Met Henry at the diner we'd haunted after shifts. He was already there, cup half empty, paper folded beside his plate. "You look better," he said. "Lighter, maybe, or just running out of energy to care." Same thing at our age. The waitress poured without asking. Henry leaned closer. "Ever think of writing it all down? The job, the years, what mattered. The rookies could use it. Wouldn't know where to start. Most of it's waiting for things that never happen. That's the truth worth reading," he said. "Real work's only dull to the ones doing it." We ate quietly. When the check came, he paid. Considerate thanks for reminding me who we were. Driving home, a message blinked from the department press team. "We'd love to feature you." I typed one word. "Sure." Later went through the box again, past the medals and letters at the bottom, a folded note. "You'll never get credit for half of it, but some of us remember." That line carried more weight than every award combined. While locking up, the phone rang. "My son. Laura told me she came by." "She did. She's trying." "I know. You coming Sunday. The kids want you." "Yeah, I'll come." We said goodnight. The hum of the refrigerator marked the pause that followed, steady, ordinary, almost comforting. Poured a glass of water, leaned on the counter, watched the clock slide past midnight. My reflection in the glass looked calmer, or maybe time just smooths over what once burned. Typed a message to Henry. "I'll go to the ceremony. Let's show up together." Set the phone down, turned off the light, walked through the hall as drizzle began to patter across the roof, steady enough to pull me toward sleep. Friday arrived sooner than expected. The day held that still heaviness left by too many wet nights. Dressed slow the way I always did before something that mattered not out of need, but for balance. The navy suit was pressed tie straight. Stared long enough at my reflection to recognize the man, staring back older still standing. Henry arrived on time, leaned from the truck window, grinning. "Ready to be famous again?" Barely survived it once I said, climbing in. The drive passed in calm rhythm. Henry talked about his grandkids. One had joined the Marines. I answered in fragments. He never needed full sentences. Years of silent shifts had taught us how to fill the spaces between words. At the Federal Building, a handful of people stood near the entrance, some old faces, some too young to shave. The event was small, a few speeches, polite applause, coffee that tasted of paper. We checked in and sat near the back. Henry murmured, "Remember how we used to laugh at these things? I still do." The director spoke about duty and service, words I'd heard my whole life, but felt differently now. When my name came up, I walked forward, accepted another plaque, another piece of proof for a job most had forgotten existed. They read a list of posts and dates, then closed with Mr. Collins, exemplified integrity during assignments of national significance. Polite clapping, Henry louder than the rest. I shook hands, thanked the young officers, sat back down. One of them, a kid, barely 25, asked quietly, "What kept you doing it so long?" "You get used to being unseen," I said. "After a while, it feels steady. That's enough." He nodded, not yet understanding. It takes years of empty corridors to know what steady means. Afterward, Henry and I stepped out. The sky cleared, Air tasted new. "You did good," he said. "I didn't do anything." "Exactly." We crossed to the diner. He ordered pie. I took a drink. Talk wandered to broken elevators, old partners, useless weather. While he was gone, I unfolded the paper from my pocket, the department's note confirming they'd publish my short piece. Just a few plain lines I served. I kept watch. I left when it was time. He returned, studied my face, still thinking too much. Always. He laughed, paid the bill, and waved me off. Go home. Rest. At home, the machine blinked. Laura's message played. "Dad, I saw the bulletin. It's beautiful. The kids were asking about it. Come by this weekend." Her voice carried no act this time. I let the message stay, poured a glass of water, leaned against the counter. The house felt settled, balanced at last. That young officer's question came back. Why keep doing it? Maybe it wasn't peace I was chasing, but proof that even the unseen leave a mark, whether anyone notices or not. The clock ticked steady. I opened the envelope again. The plaque looked like all the others, but felt different, like something had come full circle. The phone buzzed. "We did all right, partner." I typed back. "We did what we had to." Sunday moved without plan. Drove to my son's place because Laura had called twice, the second time more invitation than duty. Streets were clear, calm as habit. Parked a few houses down, paused before stepping out. She opened the door before I knocked. "Was starting to think you'd changed your mind." "Almost did," I said. She smiled faintly, stepped aside. The kids sprawled on the floor with crayons and cereal bowls. "Grandpa," they shouted, then kept drawing. I bent ruffled hair, asked what they were making. One pointed to a stick figure in blue. "That's you. You have a medal." I nodded, unsure how to answer. Laura poured lemonade, motioned to the table. "Sit." I made lunch. The meal was simple sandwiches, fruit a pie from the store, but it carried effort. My son came in from the yard, gave an awkward hug. "Glad you came." They wouldn't stop asking. We ate in easy conversation, schoolwork neighbors, small talk that filled the space gently. During dessert, Laura glanced up. "They showed your photo on the local news. You looked proud." I was standing still. "That's what I mean. You looked like someone who didn't need to explain himself." The words caught me. I traced crumbs with my fork. Maybe I just ran out of explanations. My son cleared his throat. "Mom called last night. She saw the article. She's happy they recognized you. She always liked a good ending." Laura tilted her head. "Is it an ending?" "Depends who's telling it." The youngest climbed onto my lap holding another drawing. "This one's you at work." A small figure beside a tall gray building. "It's a school," she said. "You're keeping people safe." I swallowed. "That's right." Laura watched softer now. "When I met you, I thought you didn't like me. You barely spoke. I didn't know what to say. You already had everything figured out." "I thought I did," she said, smiling, unsure. The air between us eased. No one tried to fix anything. The pause no longer hurt. Later, while my son helped the kids, Laura and I stepped onto the porch. She handed me a cup. I still feel guilty about that night. I know, but guilt's heavy. You can't hold it forever. I don't expect forgiveness. I stopped being angry. That's enough. We listened to a mower droning down the street. She drew a slow breath. "You've changed how I talk about people about work pride. I notice more now. That's something." It is. When I left, the kids ran out waving drawings. I took one, a crooked figure with a bright badge. Driving home, it sat beside me, edges smudged but shape clear. For all its roughness, it looked more like me than any photo ever had. Back home, I laid it on the counter. Light cut faint stripes across the table. Poured water, took a sip, the kind of tired that feels earned. Henry's message came through. "You handled it your way. That's what matters." I typed back, "Maybe the only way I could." The week moved unevenly slow, then sudden. Fell back into small routines, walks, diner meals, the rhythm of a house that stayed steady, no matter what shifted beyond it. Something lingered, like a word, half-formed. Henry called midweek. They're filming interviews with the honorees, he said. Just a few questions about what service means. You up for it? I nearly said no, but paused. When Saturday? 15 minutes tops. Fine. The thought clung like humidity. I tried ignoring it, but it followed me through the rooms. Talking had never been my strength. My job was presence, showing up, standing, still being the calm in someone else's storm. Explaining it felt wrong, like trying to justify air. Saturday came, met Henry at the community hall. Relax, he said, grinning. They just want your story. Tell it like it was. A woman with a clipboard led us to a corner with a chair and recorder. Just talk, she said. We'll edit later. Henry went first, his courthouse story, Smoke family's steady hands. Then, my turn. Mr. Collins, she asked, how would you describe your years in service? Ordinary. I said, ordinary. We showed up, did the job, went home. If it stayed calm, that meant we did it right. She asked about courage. I shook my head. Not courage habit. You stand your ground long enough, it becomes who you are. She wrote something down. That's honest. When we finished, Henry clapped my shoulder. See, still breathing. Barely. He laughed. We had lunch nearby. He ordered pancakes past noon. When you spoke, the room went still, he said. I wasn't saying anything new. That's why they listened. Everyone's used to noise. I let that sit. The world rewarded volume, not steadiness. Maybe that's why silence still felt like home. At my door, a package waited. No label, just my name in neat handwriting. A framed photo from the ceremony, me mid-handshake, expression unreadable. A note on the back. For your grandchildren someday. I leaned it against the wall. Later walked the long route by the river. Families on benches, kids chasing one another. A man played catch with his daughter, laughter carrying far. Watching them stirred something, not regret, more like awareness of the days that blurred while I was standing guard elsewhere. My son's message buzzed, dinner tomorrow. No guests, just family. I replied, I'll be there. The walk back felt lighter. Streetlights blinked on one by one. At home, I ate leftover stew standing at the counter, old habit. Called Henry. Got the photo. It's good, he said. You look like you belong. Maybe I finally do. Dinner felt easier this time. The kids ran up with drawings, me holding their hands in front of a house. Laura had written our names along the bottom, hers included. My son was setting the table. You made it? He said, still half surprised. Mom's bringing dessert later. You two talk again. She called last week, asked about you. Guess she realized we don't get to choose which parts of people we remember. We ate chicken and potatoes, the kind of meal that doesn't need talk to fill the space. The kids argued over cornbread, their noise softening the room. Halfway through, my phone buzzed. Unknown number, Mr. Collins, a man asked. Department Publication Office, just confirming a few details for next month's article. I stepped to the porch. He read through dates, titles, spellings, then paused. A colleague mentioned you declined public credit during the '98 courthouse lockdown. True. She wrote that your choice saved lives. Can we include that? My chest tightened. Yes, I said. Back at the table, my son asked, everything okay, just paperwork? He refilled my glass. You sure you're fine with all this attention? I don't mind. I just never expected it. Laura arrived soon after, balancing a pie dish. Lemon meringue, she said. You liked it last time. That was 3 years ago. Still counts. We served slices, past plates. She caught my eye a few times, then looked away. The evening stayed easy, small talk dishes, clinking the kids' voices, fading as they drifted off. When the house settled, she dried her hands. There's something I've wanted to tell you. That first dinner, you looked at me like I'd taken something from you. I think you were right. I took the story and made it smaller so I'd feel bigger. It wasn't the story you took, I said. It was the meaning. She nodded. I was scared of ordinary. ordinary. Thought if I dressed life up, people would believe it was better. And now ordinary sounds peaceful. She looked worn, not proud, tired from pretending too long. She wasn't trying to win anymore, just to stand somewhere true. We cleaned up. My son walked us to the door. The kids love these nights, he said. Laura added, we do too. Cool air met us on the step. She lingered near her car. You'll come again if I'm invited. You always are. The drive home was slow. Passing the courthouse, I parked across the street. That building had carried my life for years. Stone walls, long hours wait no one saw. Guards stood where I once had young and waiting for trouble that never came. I knew that stance, wanting to be noticed, hoping not to be needed. The lights flickered, closing time. I started the car and drove on. At home, the answering machine blinked. Mr. Collins, a voice said, this is David from the department. We've sent you the final draft of the article and a message from Karen Hale. She asked me to tell you she's never forgotten what you did that day. She hopes you finally get to rest. I stood still. The email arrived moments later. I opened it, skimmed the formal line, stopped at the last paragraph. Some people serve loudly, others hold the world together one ordinary day at a time. Edward Collins was one of those men. I read it twice, not to believe it, but to hear it. The clock moved past midnight. I shut the computer, poured water, glanced toward the darkened street. Across the way, a porch light went out. On the counter, the kids' drawing lay folded. I smoothed it open, 3 figures holding hands before a house. Simple lines, truer than any article. I left it there beside the empty glass and turned off the light. The next day began as always, but the air felt clearer. Fed the birds with crumbs from yesterday's bread, watched them circle and settle on the railing. They knew nothing of medals or names in print. They just kept moving. While the cup cooled, I opened the email again. The words no longer carried the weight they had the night before, still kind, still steady now. Simply proof something had been. That felt right. Printed a copy, tucked it into the wooden box with the medals. The mix of paper and metal had grown heavier over the months, but the weight felt earned. By midday, Henry called. They posted it online, he said. Comments full of people thanking you. I laughed. Strangers are always generous. They're not strangers. They're the ones who slept safe while you stood watch. They just never knew your name. Now they do, I said. That's enough. We talked about old days, half memory, half ache. Before hanging up, Henry said, you sound lighter. Maybe I am. Later, I walked the river trail I used to take after shifts. Same rusted benches, same slow current. A few joggers passed. I sat watching the water move, never rushing, never still. A man stopped nearby, nodded. Mid-30s security uniform faded by years. You worked the courthouse, right? I did. My uncle used to tell stories about you. Said you taught him how to keep calm under pressure. Who's your uncle, Tom Hensley? I remembered him, quick eyes, slow grin. Tom was a good one. Still is, he said. Told me to thank you. Said you saved his career. I shook my head. He saved his own. I just didn't get in the way. The man chuckled. Guess that's what leadership is. He waved and left. I stayed, letting the words settle. It struck me how lives overlap without knowing how small acts ripple past their moment. At home, a letter waited in the mailbox, handwritten and uneven. The department's new director thanked me for setting a quiet example and mentioned they'd named a small conference room after me. A room with my name. I laughed softly. Of all things, to leave behind a place for people to meet and talk. Somehow fitting. Placed the letter in the box, closed the lid. It didn't feel like putting something away, more like returning it to its place. The evening moved in its slow rhythm. Cooked a simple meal, half listened to the radio, watered the plants. Around 8, Laura called. "Dad, the kids want to show you something." Her voice turned to giggles, then one of the kids spoke. "Grandpa, we made a sign for your office," I asked, smiling. "The one with your name. Mom said there's a room named after you. You heard about that, huh? Can we visit it?" "Maybe one day," I said. "It's just a boring room." "That's okay," she said. "We'll make it pretty." After the call, I stood a moment, phone still warm in my hand. The house carried its usual hush, soft not empty. I finished the last of my tea, looked toward the street. Across the way, a porch light flicked on. Neighbors passed with their dog leash glinting under the dim glow. Faint laughter drifted from somewhere down the block. The world went on steady as always. I opened the hallway shelf, laid the printed article on top of the stack, and slipped in a note of my own for when they ask who I was. Didn't seal it. Some truths don't need guarding. They just wait ready for whoever decides to look. Turned off the lights and went to bed. The wind brushed against the glass, steady and familiar. Not peace exactly, but something close enough to live with. Henry and I were invited a few weeks later to a small gathering downtown, a quiet dinner for retirees. He pulled up in the same truck, grin unchanged. "They keep saying it's for everyone," he said, "but we both know they just want to shake your hand again." "Then stand next to me," I said. "Let them think it's yours too." The community center was modest, wedged between a post office and a florist that still smelled of carnations even in winter. Tables lined the hall, plain cloths, too many chairs. A few familiar faces nodded as we came in, people I hadn't seen in years. No speeches this time, just talk stories and that easy laughter people share once they've lived long enough to remember. Someone handed me a drink. Someone else clapped my shoulder. For once, the attention didn't make me want to leave. It felt less like being honored and more like being kept. Henry found a corner table and waved me over. "They still talk about you," he said, half grinning. "Apparently you were the calmest man they'd ever seen in a crisis." "That's one way to describe exhaustion," I said. He chuckled. "You ever think about what comes next? I don't think there's a next. Just what's in front of me. That's still something." He looked content, sipping his drink, and I realized how long it had been since either of us sat without a plan. An older woman approached with a folder tucked under her arm. "Mr. Collins, sorry to interrupt. We're recording short messages for new recruits." "Would you share a few words?" Henry smirked. "Careful, Ed. They're trying to make you inspirational." I waved her off lightly. "Sure." She handed me a small recorder. "Say whatever you'd want them to hear." I hesitated, then said, "Most of this job isn't about bravery. It's showing up when you don't feel like it. Doing what needs to be done so others don't have to worry. You'll get tired. You'll disappear. But if you can stand through that quietly, you'll learn who you are." She smiled. "That's perfect." After she left, Henry said, "I'm stealing that line. You already lived it." We stayed until the hall emptied. On the way out, he said, "Feels like the end of a long shift, doesn't it?" "Yeah, except no one's waiting for us to clock out." We split in the parking lot. I drove home, window cracked, cold air mixing with the stale scent of coffee from the cup holder. The lights along the street blinked through empty intersections. Near my block, I noticed I wasn't hurrying anymore. Home greeted me the way it always did, still steady. I hung my jacket, kicked off my shoes, saw the box on the shelf. It had been weeks since I'd opened it. Everything rested where it should. Medals, letters, folded drawings from my grandkids. I picked one up, a stick figure me, standing beside two small children under a sky of crooked stars. The colors had dulled, but the joy hadn't. I smiled, set it back, and closed the lid. Later, Laura called. "Dad," she said, "I read the article again. I think I finally get it. Get why you never bragged. You were proud, but not the kind that needs to be seen." I paused. That's just how I was raised. She breathed out softly. "Well, thank you for letting us see it now. Better late than never." After the call, I let the quiet return, The clock ticked steady as breath. I made a sandwich, ate half, saved the rest, old habits holding on. Next day, I woke before the alarm and decided to walk. The cold stung, but it kept me awake. The streets were nearly empty, joggers, a truck, a man with his dog. Passing the courthouse, I slowed. New guards stood by the door, alert but calm. One nodded. I nodded back. Nothing more. Down by the river, the current moved steady, carrying bits of debris downstream. I sat on the same bench Henry and I had used before. For years, I'd stood still so others could move. Watching the water now, I realized stillness was part of movement too. You can't hold the world together forever, but you can steady it for a while. That's enough. Back home, the phone buzzed. Henry again. Breakfast. My treat, I smiled, typed back. Give me 10 minutes. The kettle whistled. I poured, grabbed my coat, and stepped out. The day waited ordinary, alive, same as always. Found the newspaper on the doorstep later that week, folded too neatly. The front page carried a small piece about the department's ceremony, tucked between local sports and an ad for used cars. My name wasn't in the headline, just one line halfway down. Retired Officer Edward Collins was honored for his years of service. One sentence among dozens. I cut it out anyway and slipped it into the box. The day passed slow. I washed dishes, swept the porch, trimmed the strip of grass by the sidewalk. A neighbor stopped to chat about the weather. I didn't rush. She mentioned her son was applying for a security job downtown. Not glamorous, she said, but steady. I nodded. Steady's worth more than people think. She smiled. That's what he says, too. When she left, I leaned on the railing, watching the street settle into its rhythm. Nothing grand, nothing loud, just life carrying on as it should. Steady work keeps everything standing, I said. She smiled. Maybe I'll tell him you said that. I went back in, poured a cup, and sat at the table. The stillness had changed it, no longer pressed down. It simply existed, filling space I'd grown used to. Later, I drove across town for hardware supplies. Passing the federal building, I caught the flag shifting in the wind. A young guard stood by the entrance, hands behind his back, scanning the street the way I used to. For a moment I saw myself there and almost honked, but didn't. Some moments don't need acknowledgement. At the hardware store, Henry was comparing paintbrushes. Fixing the porch, he said. Figured it's time things looked new again. New or less broken. He laughed. Maybe both. We walked the aisles, talking about nothing. He mentioned his granddaughter, curious, stubborn, full of questions about his old work. You'd like her, he said. Sounds dangerous. That's what makes her interesting. At the register, he paid first. What color, he asked as I grabbed a small can. Something close to what it used to be. Fitting. Back home, I painted the railing. The motion was easy, steady. By the time I finished, the sun had dropped low. I cleaned the brush, left the can half full, and sat on the steps. The smell of paint and grass lingered. A boy pedaled past, one hand waving. Hey, Mr. Collins, don't crash, I said. He laughed, wobbling before straightening out. Watching him pulled an old memory of my son at that age, carefree, before the world started asking for more. The porch light flicked on. I stayed there a bit longer. Laura had called earlier, asking if I'd come for Sunday dinner. The kids want to show you something, she'd said. Practicing what you'll see. I found myself looking forward to it. That night, I ate a small meal and read through a pile of old letters. Most came from retired colleagues, brief notes about families, and the strange emptiness after the job ends. One line from Tom Hensley's letter caught my eye. When people forget what we did, it means the world is quiet again. That's the goal, isn't it? I folded it neatly and slipped it back into the box. I checked the locks, turned off the lights, and paused by the window. The street looked calm, the kind of calm you only understand once you've seen it fall apart. Next day, I packed a small bag, an old photo, the kids' drawings, and the newspaper clipping. I didn't know why, only that it felt right. At Laura's, the kids waited in the yard. "Grandpa, come here." They led me behind the house where a wooden birdhouse hung from a branch. "We made it for you," the older one said, "so you can hang it on your porch." It was uneven but sturdy. I ran a hand along the edge. "It's perfect." Laura smiled from the patio. "They wanted you to have something that keeps the quiet company." Then it's exactly what I needed. We sat watching the kids chase each other. My son joined us with lemonade. "Looks good on you," he said. "What does this being at ease?" I didn't argue. There was nothing left to prove. The birdhouse stayed empty for weeks, swinging gently in the breeze. I didn't mind. Things find their place in time. Each day I checked it while watering the porch plants. The mint spread wider than expected. The basil held its scent. I trimmed a little, left the rest to grow. The neighborhood woke earlier as summer came, kids on bikes, trucks rumbling, someone always mowing too soon. I liked it that way. A noisy world meant a living one. Most days Henry called just to talk. You keeping busy enough to stay out of trouble? He'd laugh, say he was the same. Sometimes we met at the diner, ordered the usual sat, without needing to fill every minute. The waitress never asked what we wanted anymore. She knew our order, how we took our coffee. Small routines like that kept the days soft. Once while we ate, Henry asked, "You ever think we might have done it right? Just showing up, doing our jobs? I think that's all anyone really can do." He nodded. "Then I guess that's enough." On the way home, I passed the elementary school. Kids filled the playground, teachers calling names, a crossing guard waving cars through. It struck me how much of life goes unseen, how many people keep it steady without asking to be noticed. The thought stayed with me. At home, a package waited by the door, Laura's handwriting on the front. Inside was a photo album, mismatched pages of family pictures. Early ones of my son as a boy, then newer ones of the grandchildren. Toward the back, a printed copy of the department article and a note tucked beside it. "We wanted to keep your story close, for when the kids ask who you are." I smiled, ran my thumb along the edge of the note, and closed the album. It didn't need words back. Later that week, Laura called. "Dad, we're hosting a barbecue Saturday. You'll come? Wouldn't miss it." The yard was crowded, neighbors, kids' voices spilling everywhere. My son worked the grill, Laura handled plates. Someone handed me lemonade, someone else a chair. I didn't bother refusing. The kids ran up with paint on their hands. "Grandpa, we made something." They led me to the fence where a small sign hung crookedly. "Collins Family Backyard, protected by Grandpa." The letters were uneven paint dripping at the corners, but it hit deeper than any award could. I just laughed. "Looks official." Laura grinned. "We figured it should be." Through the afternoon, I let the noise surround me, stories that went nowhere but still mattered. I carried plates, refilled cups, listened, and stayed. As the sun lowered, I slipped to the porch. Laura joined me with 2 glasses of tea. She passed one over. "It's been a while since you looked this relaxed," she said. "Maybe I ran out of things to fix, or maybe you decided they don't need fixing." We sat in the easy stillness that comes when words have done enough. The children's laughter mixed with the soft clatter of dishes and the fading hum of the day. When I left, Laura hugged me longer than usual. "You know," she said, "you're the calmest person I've ever met." I wasn't always. Well, whatever you did to get here, it worked. Driving home, I took the long route. The courthouse stood dim steps empty. I slowed, but didn't stop. That building never belonged to me. It was just a place I'd stood for a while. The house felt lighter when I returned. I brewed tea, set the cup near the window, and listened. A faint tapping came from the porch, the birdhouse moving again. This time, a small chirp answered the motion. Fragile, alive, unafraid. I leaned back, eyes closed. The world wasn't louder than before. I'd simply learned how to hear it. The silence I'd carried for years had changed shape. It wasn't weight anymore, just space. The tea cooled beside me. Somewhere down the street, a door shut. A dog barked once, and the night folded over everything. I stood, stretched, stepped onto the porch. The birdhouse swayed, catching the hint of life inside. I didn't check. Things had found their rhythm. I sat on the steps, the scent of mint faint on my hands, the world humming its steady tune. For once I let it play, without wondering what came next.